I need to start with a rather lame beginning by saying that, of course, I've never done something like this before. I've never had a paranormal experience before this, or seen ghosts throughout my entire life, believed in ghosts before. My fiancé and I bought a small house in a small suburb outside of St. Louis 4 months before our wedding. Since my parents are very religious and don't live near us, we decided not to tell them that we moved in together. We figured we wouldn't start an argument with them, since we were getting married soon anyway. My sister Liz lived near us and knew that we were living together. She would come over to the house when we were fixing it up and tease me by saying stuff like, "You are going to hell for lying to our parents and living in sin." She was always joking, and I would tell her to stop being mean to me. One afternoon, she and I were at the house together, and my fiancé, Dave, was out buying supplies to paint our living room the next day. Of course, Liz was still teasing me, and I was laughing about it. She soon said she had to leave, but would be back the next morning to help us paint the living room. When she left, I was in the living room, getting everything ready to paint the next day, and I saw something written on the wall in pencil. I went over to look at it, and it said, "You are a sinner." The pencil was lying on the floor, next to the wall. I figured it was my sister's idea for a joke, since we were going to paint, and it would be covered up. I decided to respond to her, and wrote under it in pencil, "You're not being funny." I was laughing to myself about it, and went on putting tape around the bottom of the wall. After I was done, I went back to the wall with the writing, and saw what I had written was gone. I was so shocked that I stood there for a minute, not moving at all. Nothing, I mean nothing, had ever happened to me like this. I was trying to rationalize it in my mind, with little success, when I noticed the pencil was gone too. I found it on the kitchen counter, 20 feet away. I called my sister on her cell phone and asked her if she had written it. She said she didn't know what I was talking about. Now, my sister and I are very close in age, and I know when she is trying to pull something over on me. My fiancé came home soon after that, and I told him what happened. He didn't quite believe me, but could tell that I was really shaken by the whole experience. That night, when we went to bed, my fiancé got up in the night to use the bathroom. The next morning, he told me that I forgot to turn the living room light off when we went to bed, and I know that I had turned it off. The next morning, my sister came to help us paint, and I told her the weird things that had happened. She believed me a little more than my fiancé, but they were both highly skeptical. While we were painting the living room, I was very edgy. My sister was still making jokes, but I didn't think they were quite as funny this time. When we took a break for lunch, we put our brushes and rollers in the pans on the living room floor and went out for lunch. When we came back, all of the brushes and rollers that we had been using were lying on the kitchen table. The paint on them ruined the table, and my fiancé and sister and I became believers in ghosts. We were all pretty scared and didn't want to be in the house anymore. A friend of ours from high school recently graduated from seminary and was a priest. I decided to call him, but he was busy and couldn't take our call right away. None of us wanted to continue painting, but my fiancé convinced us to stay by saying that with the three of us there, it wouldn't be too scary. Nothing else happened the rest of the day. My sister stayed the night with us because we didn't want to be scared of our new home. She slept with me in the bed, and Dave slept on the floor. That night, we heard movement in the living room, so the three of us, looking ridiculous, held hands and crept to the living room. Dave turned on the light. Liz and I screamed, and there was absolutely nothing there. It was empty, except for a ladder we had used, and it had been moved to the other side of the room. We went back to the bedroom and debated whether to spend the rest of the night there or go to my sister's apartment. We decided to stay. None of us slept well, but we didn't hear anything else. The next day, My sister and I decided to meet my neighbors. We didn't want them to think we were insane by telling them we had a ghost, but we wanted to find out who had lived in the house before us. A woman across the street told us that an older woman lived there and mentioned that she was really religious and kept religious knickknacks all over the house, but she died in the house 5 years ago. Since then, there have been some renters, but no one had bought the place since her death until us. We decided that she was the one haunting us. My friend, the priest, finally called me back, and I told him what was happening. He agreed to come over and bless the house and give us some kind of comfort. When he got there, he told us that he felt like something was different about the house, but he didn't think she was trying to do us harm. He blessed the house, and the rest of the day went without incident. That night, I had a dream that an old woman was in her living room crying and saying that she didn't want her house to belong to people who weren't married. I remember trying to argue with her, telling her we were getting married soon. Then, all of a sudden, she vanished. I don't know if I was actually arguing with the woman who had lived there, or if I was feeling guilty for lying to my parents. I woke up, and I realized I was crying. I think that the woman must have loved the house and didn't want to leave, but realized she had to. I feel bad that I made her leave, but since the dream, we have not had a single occurrence. I sincerely hope she doesn't come back. I may be a coward. I don't like sharing a house with a ghost. I'm in the military, stationed in Okinawa, Japan. My wife, child, and I live in an apartment complex on base. The housing is built over a large battle site, which took place during the war. My wife is very sensitive to ghosts and apparitions. They have followed her since she was a child in Texas. Well, she and I were sitting in the living room, watching TV one night, when a figure walked out from the hall, stopped and turned back towards the hallway, and disappeared. This was my first time ever seeing a ghost. On several occasions, a bright ball of white light has been seen moving throughout the house, especially in my son's room. It seems to like him a lot. It also turns his toys on whenever it feels like it, which is quite often. The most unbelievable night of my life was experienced recently while my wife and I were sleeping. I awoke to a shadowy figure standing next to the bed. I was uncovered at the time, and the figure seemed to be reaching for me. I tried to scream, but nothing came out. This happened 3 times that night. On the 3rd time, I just laid still and watched the figure grab for me, reach the covers, and pull them back over me. It seems that this ghost is very friendly and means no harm in any way. It has always been prone to my wife. It frequently calls her name or watches her do the dishes. She tells me at least one new story a week about something strange in the house or things being moved. I was not a believer in ghosts anyway, but now it seems impossible not to be. Thanks for reading. I didn't think much of all I experienced in my mother's house until some years later, and when I think of it now, I can look back and realize that some really disturbing things went on there when I was living there. First, I would like to shed some light on the history of the house. The house was built sometime in the 1920s, maybe a little bit before that. It was owned by a very prominent family in town at the time, the Hazeltons, who owned a jewelry store downtown. Their daughter, Frida, was somewhat of a recluse who never married, and for what I know, never left home. I found some letters and photos along with period clothing, which the letters were from Frida's travels. Although she never married, being wealthy, she traveled to Rome, Greece, and other places. From what I know, she died suddenly and violently one day. In my mother's house, there is a big wooden staircase which curved very sharply. Frida evidently tripped on the stairs and fell to the bottom step, breaking her neck. There was one occasion when I was little. I don't remember how old, that I remember sitting at the top of the stairs and feeling a pushing sensation on my back, and I fell down the stairs and landed on the bottom step. I was unhurt, but I still get cold chills thinking about the eerie similarities. I always felt a weird feeling going up and down the stairs, so much so that many times my sister would have to carry me up them at night, and I would close my eyes the whole entire way. It always felt like someone was behind us. Things fell off a bookshelf sometimes. You could just feel a presence there sometimes, watching you. Nothing really violent happened, other than the stair episode. My sister said that once, she looked out into the narrow hallway, across it to my brother's room, and his whole doorway was covered with what looked like a white, cloudy web-like substance. Also, one night, my sister awoke from sleep to find 3 cloud-like forms standing at the end of the bed. This kind of thing continued to happen until I left home. I never saw any forms or persons myself, but I'm convinced that Frida was still clinging to her home and resented us living there, somewhat. It all started when I was 11 years old, living with my mother, sister, and stepdad in the house I lived in from birth. It was an old council estate, established in the early 1900s, about 5-minute walk away from a coal mining site that was destroyed around 1920 with a blast from inside, killing hundreds trapped inside. This is what I used as an excuse to explain many of the weird occurrences around the town. Anyway, back to the story. When I was 11, in the early hours of one Saturday morning, I woke to see a small boy, a couple of years younger than me, stood at the side of my bed and staring down at me. I say staring, even though he had no eyes, just black hollows. He seemed to be on the chubby side and wearing a gray outfit. Thinking it was my nephew, as it was common for him to stay over at the weekends, that just startled me. I grabbed my pillow and swung at him, only he wasn't there anymore, and my nephew was asleep on the blow-up bed at the foot. I then looked down the corridor to the bathroom and saw a man peering around the door, thinking someone had come through the front door, as it was left open to relieve the smell of paint. I ran to confront the man, only no one was there. Thanks for reading, and I hope you understood my story. Hi, my name is Mark. I'm 17 years old, and I've been interested in ghosts since I was around 7. My friend, whose name is James, bought this old nursing house when he moved to England a few years back from Canada. I've spent many nights at this house, and it is a very big and also very old house. He has a lot of old pictures and stuff, and it's kind of freaky when you're walking around at night. One night, I stayed at his house. His mom and dad were not there. They had gone away for the weekend. That's why I was staying, because he doesn't like staying with his sister and her friends. So I came over, and we were just mucking about, listening to music. We were upstairs in his room, and we heard a really big thud. We just looked at each other and waved it by, not taking any notice. And then, a little while later, his sister and her friend came running in, really shook up, like they were mumbling and practically crying. They were about 3 years younger than us, and we asked them what the matter was. They said that they had seen a woman upstairs. They have 3 floors. We're on the 2nd. Thinking this, we thought that someone had broken into the house, so we decided to go upstairs and have a look around. When we got upstairs, the immediate feeling that we felt was that there was a strange smell and an eerie atmosphere, and me being interested in ghosts and all, I thought to myself that there's some signs. It got a little colder, too cold. We went into the rooms upstairs, and we searched the upstairs very well, and we found nothing. We went back downstairs and told his sister that we didn't see anyone. They were adamant they did, and they stayed downstairs with us that night because they were scared. That all happened around 10 o'clock. A little further into the night, Me and James were still awake, and we sometimes go onto his roof at night. It's like a flat roof on the top of his house, and we sit up there. We were sitting up there, just chatting, and we heard another thud. At this point, I got really freaked out because I saw a shadow in the window below, and we were upstairs. James went really quiet, and we got down into a little slope to get back in through the window. That's when we saw a middle-aged woman standing at the closet, folding sheets. We froze. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. We didn't know this woman, and I don't think she saw us, but she walked around the corner of the hallway and disappeared. At this point, we got in through the window, went downstairs, turned on just about every little light along the way, and stayed up all night. It's the most frightening thing I've ever experienced. My father passed away in September of 2001. He had been suffering from severe emphysema for about 5 years. We were all torn up over him dying. We were all at the cemetery for the graveside service. As soon as the service was over, everyone heard this loud clop, clop, clop sound, and the sound over something dragging on the ground. I turned to see what was the commotion. There was a man wearing golf shoes. They have metal cleats on them, carrying his golf bag and dragging another larger bag on the ground. This was in the middle of a cemetery. There was no golf course anywhere nearby. It was such a strange sight. My husband came up to me and said that it's a sign from your dad. Believes there's always a sign at a funeral. My dad loved to play golf. When he got really sick, he couldn't play anymore. He would only play on his PC. I think he was letting everyone know he was okay now. I have already quite a few experiences with ghosts and things of that kind. I strongly believe in ghosts, so I believe that all of my experiences are 100% true. When I was around 5 years old, we lived in Bangkok, Thailand. We had a great big apartment, but my room always gave me the spooks. I'll never play by myself in it, and if I ever wanted to do something in there, I would drag my mom in there with me. One of our friends was very spiritual and was sort of a medium, so my mother asked her to come into our house and tell us maybe what the problem was, as she too, my mom, was a little frightened herself. The moment our friend stepped in, she said she could sense something, but it wasn't going to do any harm to us. All we had to do was tell it to go to the light. Well, I was too young to do it. My brothers and dad couldn't sense it, and my mom was too scared, so we didn't do anything. Then one day, by chance, I was getting something from my room, and I could feel something. So, I looked up, and there in front of me, I saw the back of a lady. She was wearing a pink dress and, as crazy as it sounds, green skin. Her hand was placed on the light switch. Then all of a sudden, she just walked out and completely disappeared. I ran to my mom, but she was busy talking to a friend, so she didn't hear what I said. After this event, the feelings weren't as strong, although they still remained. Around 6 months later, we moved to Bahrain, in the Middle East, and when we were there, I was drawing this picture of the family. I showed it to my parents, and I pointed out all the family members. Then they came to this lady, and they say, "Who's that, Sarah?" To which I replied, "Oh, that's the lady who lived in my bedroom." That was quite scary. Also, when I lived in the UAE, the Middle East, the ghost who lived there would play games with me. It would hide a pen, which was positively there, or close the curtains when I had just opened them. When my uncle visited us, he actually saw a small boy at the end of his bed, although I never saw anything. I've had various experiences where I can sense something there. Take the time I was at my mother's friend's house, and I needed to go to the bathroom. I was about 8 or 9 years old, so off I went. I could not for whatever reason go do my business, so I ended up not going, as I kept getting that feeling that someone was watching me. Later that evening, we were talking about paranormal experiences, and the lady mentioned that the spirit of some family member of hers lived in the house with them. So, those are basically my stories, and there are probably many more to come. Who knows? Maybe I'm partially a sort of medium. I like to think so anyway. Happy Wednesday, everybody. And first of all, I just want to apologize for not getting this video out to you soon enough. I know Mondays are usually my upload days, but I'm behind like 2 more days now, so I guess that's not good. But you know what they say, choo-choo goes the train, and we're chugging along. We all go from preschool, playing with those toy trains, to the beautiful wonders of college, where you're just chugging along with your alcohol. Now that's what, I don't know what I'm saying, guys. Anyway, go ahead and like, comment, share, and subscribe to this video if you haven't yet. There's content that I post that's always ghost stories, so you might want to check that out. Previous videos, and just, enjoy yourself. We have a real blast here on the Phantom of Darkness channel. We just have, fun. We jump up and down and just be ourselves until we can't do it anymore, which is never. We're always ourselves here. The community is great. You just sit down, you have a beer, and then maybe you have some, chicken, or I don't know why I can mention beer. Maybe I'm stressed out and need some beer or something like that. Decompress. Who knows? Right now, I'm just happy this video is out and you guys enjoyed it. Hopefully. Seriously though, guys, I'm gonna pick my favorite story, and I would say maybe the last one, actually. I really like the golf story, but this last one about the guy in Thailand seeing the green lady and whatever, that was a pretty cool story. Can't talk, obviously, I'm slurring my words as usual, but just know that I really appreciated that story. So let me know in the comment section below what your favorite story was. And if you got to the end of this video, which you probably did, you can say, chicken waffles, and, Sally got back to her house. All right. I'm kidding. I'm so weird. Anyway, guys, I love you. Good night, good morning, and I will see you in the next video.